Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today again I am joined by my partner Lynn, or at We Cosplayer, and we are going to be reviewing the third episode of season 2, which is of course The Well. Apologies that this is a day late. Basically we couldn't record yesterday afternoon because Lynn was away at a con, Kaiju Con, and I couldn't watch the episode until she came home, which was about 7 o'clock in the evening, and by the time we finished the episode, Lynn was pretty much just ready to go to bed. So, and I did say we're not going to do the review anyway, probably right afterwards. So we're recording on a Sunday. We've watched Unleashed finally before doing one of these reviews, so we have a bit more context as to how they made it and stuff. So yeah, we're going to go into it. I'll say my thoughts very briefly first, because this is a hard review to do for me because I don't know how to feel about it. Like Robot Revolution, I thought that was poor from the off. Lux, I've watched 3 times now since doing the review. I liked it more the second time. Unfortunately, the third time it's gone down to a 6. I think for me, it went from a 6.5 to a 7 to a 6. It keeps changing, so I'm gonna stop rewatching it. That's it. I've decided it's just not gonna hit it for me like a lot of people has in the fandom, which is a shame. And then this just came about, and I'm like, I was very excited for this, going off the trailer, because I've had no excitement for this season at all, as I've previously stated. Lux was the only thing I was looking forward to, but this came up, and the only reason why I got excited for it was because of the trailer that we got at the end of last week's, and I was like, oh, that looks really good, creepy and mysterious. And then I found out about the rumours after watching that trailer, which really annoyed me because my friend Dan said, I'm worried about the rumours. I was like, what rumours? He was like, oh, it's a sequel to Midnight. And then I go into the YouTube trailer because it was different from the one at the end of Lux, and yeah, obviously I've seen that raven in the comments, and I was very skeptical. I was like, oh fuck, what? Sorry. So my excitement went, and I think because with this episode, because of the rumours, and pretty much it's a given now, any rumours that come out about Doctor Who turn out to be true. A lot has in the last couple of years. I mean, if this was 10 years ago, most of it would have been, bullshit, or people would have disregarded it. But no, like, rumours now in this fandom really pretty much comes true. David Tennant coming back, Sutek coming back. All the animations have turned out to be correct. Obviously the Midnight sequels turned out to be correct. Pre-Hartnell Doctors turned out to be correct. Mrs. Flores Arani will probably turn out to be correct. It just keeps happening and happening. So, it's a thing in this fandom now. So when I heard about that, I wasn't like, oh, it's rubbish. No, it's gonna be, isn't it? So, and I think because we could guess and knew what was coming, there was no surprise for me about it. I was pretty much just sitting there watching it, and I was like, okay, we're on a mining planet's been mined, and yada yada yada. And then they kept going about galvanic radiation. I was like, oh yeah, that doesn't sound fucking too dissimilar to what happened last. Because I rewatched the episode yesterday afternoon while Slim was away, just to get context for it and get it better. And pretty much from the off, I mean, it was kind of obvious that it was going to happen, but when the doctor started asking, like, oh, where are we in that, I just sort of sat there like, yep, here we go. Said a line came up, I was like, yeah, there we go. I wasn't like, oh my god. It was just kind of, so I don't know how to feel about this, and I feel like it done stuff that I wanted it to do, but I'm not. I don't know. I'm not loving it like everyone else does for some weird reason. But Lynn had a much more. Sorry, we're 4 minutes into this. Lynn had a much more positive reaction, I guess, than me. But anyway, what is your thoughts?
I enjoyed it. For me, it's definitely an 8. But at the same time, I still don't really know how to feel about it either.
Yeah, so is that pretty much same opinion?
One of those ones where, because take out everything that we knew previous going into this, from all what we've heard from everybody else talking about it, hyping it up and whatnot, you can pretty much, from the minute we're on the planet, and we start walking through and you get glimpses of bits, you start talking about things.
The smashing all the mirrors was like a pretty fucking, like, key thing, because obviously we never thought about this in Reflection, obviously, because there's no mirrors in that first episode, so
so you sort of start to put the pieces together, and then when you find out that it's not completely deserted as they thought it was, and there is one person still alive, then you start to go, okay, there's your horse. What does this start to feel a bit like?
Yeah.
But you still don't make the connection 100% because you don't know that the planet dies completely.
No, exactly.
You think that is the planet as it is.
Yeah.
Because we know it's a mining planet.
Yeah.
It isn't until you start finding the other pieces and things start happening that you start to realise, this is the same planet.
Yeah.
And you never realise that scenes before you're told.
No, I know.
So it's kind of, as much as it had its suspense and enjoyment in it, it was very, very predictable.
Oh yeah, it was very predictable, yeah.
Because for anybody that's seen Midnight, they would go, oh, that's this. Oh, okay, so we know where we're heading then, roughly. If you haven't seen Midnight and you are a newer fan, you might get more out of it.
I was about to say that.
Because you're not clouded by what you already know of the creature previous. But then you've got the problem of...
I mean, if you're a new fan, this would have been fucking amazing.
But then you've got the other problem of... And it wasn't even me that noticed it so much from reading other things this morning. In the original story, Midnight, you get this whole being learning from us humans by manipulating us and taking our voice and speaking for us and all this.
Yeah. Which I'm guessing they didn't do any of that.
Then you get to the well and they're not doing that so much. It's more whispering in the ear.
Yeah.
So it makes is it a continuity error or was that the whole idea originally? Because there's a couple of ways you can look at it. And in the original, where they're whispering, and that they've just repeated what they were whispered.
Yeah.
Or where they're learning, as we know they were in that episode at the time.
Yeah.
And they've just advanced so much now to the point where they have a voice of their own. It's sort of trying to fit it into where it should be.
Yeah.
It's a bit of a case of, did we miss something the first time? Or
no.
has it progressed, not magnificently, but has it progressed enough to have some sort of voice to manipulate people rather than just mimicking and stealing the voice from other people?
To be honest, see, this is that, it depends what you, as a fan, it depends what you want to interpret it that as, whether if that is a continuity error or it's a progression thing. Now, we do know this is 400,000 years later, we know that. Yeah. So obviously the planet's been mined and it's just a wasteland pretty much, more or less. So there's nothing left apart from this creature, obviously, because I assume that's where it's from anyway. But and then it doesn't make you think if there's more of this creature, or is it all just one entity? Are the vast ones that one that, let's say, it died in the first one, is another one on that planet? We don't know, and I mean that is the mystery, and I think this was kind of not ruined it, but RTD literally said in the fucking Unleashed, this is an episode you should never do to a sequel to. Why are we doing it then? It's not, that's not clever to me. That's not clever. That's just, and we'll come back to that. But you can it was co-wrote by him, and you can tell that it was co-wrote.
But come back on what you were saying about surviving and stuff.
I forgot what was I going to say? Oh no, sorry. Before you go on, because I hadn't finished my point. I've just remembered. What I was meant to say is the way I've always seen it as with that creature, at least from rewatching the first episode yesterday, is it doesn't have a voice, and to me, it's clinging onto that person and is literally enveloping them and holding on to them, and it's communicating through their voice. But obviously it's repeating or saying stuff before or after to taunt them, obviously. But that's why I always seen it as this creature wouldn't have a voice. It's just a shapeless entity thing that's using us to communicate. I never imagined a whispering thing at all. So that's how I always seen it anyway.
Yeah, I do see your point. It's kind of a hard one to really grasp around.
Yeah, I know, because we don't know what the fuck it is.
Yeah,
so.
But going back on your point of the whole survival stuff, it's from back on what I said in chat when we were talking about it. All we know is Guy was sacrificed.
Yeah.
To take the creature out with her.
Yeah.
But that entity was already surviving outside the ship.
Yeah. This seems to be a thing no one... Yeah, that's right.
Already survived outside the ship before it entered.
Yeah.
So you've got to either presume two things. One, with Guy coming, sacrificing herself with it, was the cabin pressure enough for it to die with Guy? Or was that enough for it to survive and live on to some degree? It might have been damaged. It might have needed to revive itself, but enough to live on because it had survived in that planet well before being on board.
Yeah, I know.
So it thrives in that environment.
Yeah, it does make you think how it would adapt, and if it can. I mean, well, we don't know. That's the thing. We don't know. We're not supposed to know. But it's just one of those things that fans are trying to, we try to wrap our brain around. Okay, it can survive on the planet's atmosphere, of which we can't. Okay, so it breathes whatever in, right? But with the cabin pressure, been able to slowly kill it off, or did it adapt to that as well? And it didn't die when it was with it. This is the thing we don't know, but there's a few continuity errors and things that people keep bringing up about this, and the more you think about it, it's like how does this fit? Like we'll come back to what they've actually done here, and like from watching Unleashed, it was pretty clear that it was shoehorned in. It doesn't to me it didn't feel like it was naturally part of the episode. I think it would have been better off without it. The main thing I want to talk about, and the thing that I enjoyed the most about it easily, was Rose Alien Elsa's performance, and obviously with Lynn being part of the deaf community.
Not really in a sense. Because I grew up in the hearing world, so I'm not really part of the community.
But you're still hearing impaired.
Yeah, I would say more hard of hearing.
I know that Lynn is more hard. Right, the point is still being is Lynn is part of the deaf community. She's still hearing impaired. So, obviously, seeing that and the doctor using British Sign Language, it didn't make me cry, but it did hit me like that is really so lovely to see, because we've never ever seen that in the show, and
it's a first.
Yeah, it's a first, and obviously you would imagine the doctor knows how to do all the sign language, and for anyone in any race, of course he would know that, or they would know that, I should say. So just seeing them do that after 62 years is a really lovely thing. And we've watched Unleashed, and they've talked a bit more about it and how they did it. But I think the question should be for Lynn here, because I do have someone who's obviously part of that experience. But what did it do for you in here?
For me, it's nice to see, like anybody with any form of disability to some degree, it's nice to see representation, so you don't see a lot of it. It's getting a bit more common now, and that's for everybody in the disabled community, no matter what it may be. We are seeing a lot more representation in many forms, because that's what I loved about this season and last season. How diverse the characters are and the characters and stuff like that, which is really nice to see. But I just loved how they actually copied it in so perfectly, so beautifully. They used every element of fear from not being able to hear.
Yeah, I know.
The way that most of us experience in everyday life.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Because the biggest thing that you can do for anybody is turn their back on them.
Yeah, which they made a big thing of.
Ignore them completely. or tell them it didn't matter because it didn't hear. Yeah, we may need to ask you to repeat things, but if we're asking you to repeat things so many times, then take it upon yourself to go, okay, I'll rephrase it, I'll use different words.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's not that we can't hear you, we can't make out the words you're saying.
Yeah, I know.
Because the average person would be probably hearing every second or third word.
Yeah.
We've just got to hope it's a key word.
Keywords, yeah.
Because if it's not a key word, then we can't fill the gaps in.
No.
And let me know it gets you so far.
No, it does, and they even mentioned that in this episode as well. As someone who has never been around a deaf person or a person of hard of hearing, Lynn has been a totally new experience for me. I'm still learning about all that, like trying to not turn my back away, or like, which they made a really big thing of, and the whole lip reading thing, which sometimes that's how I communicate to Lynn. I will just mouth it because she does it very well, but she does it better when she's not concentrating, apparently.
It's just because I picked it up, I'm not really learning it. You can learn it.
Yeah.
But weirdly for me, I don't know if it's because of how I picked it up, because I consider myself more hearing community than deaf community.
Yeah.
Just because of having hearing parents and not being the only one in the family.
Yeah.
Facial hair doesn't bother me.
So what
facial hair doesn't bother me, because they always, if you ever learn to properly read, they always tell you not obscure the mouth, cover the mouth, and facial hair can sometimes make it harder for you to read. But for me, it never bothered me. I don't know if that's because I do have a percentage of hearing, where I'm using a bit of both and not relying solely on lip reading.
Right, I'm wondering if she brought that up just because I happened to shave yesterday.
No, it's a valid point.
As you will notice from last week's review, but do you know, I never really considered that.
It's a valid point. It's just because lip reading.
So have you been fine with my face? Good.
Weirdly.
Okay, good.
But it's more to represent how lip reading works and how important it is to somebody, because a lot of obstacles get in the way.
Yeah.
And that's why they always tell you to speak clear.
Yeah.
Don't just speak, just make sure it's clear and we can pick up the lip pattern, because so many lip patterns are very similar to other words.
Yeah. Like there was a key line in this that Archie went on about in Unleashed, and it was a really nice thing to bring up, but like the way, because obviously Rose is deaf herself and she's playing a deaf character, obviously, you made a point of, like, one of the big things in that episode that was quite emotional to hear was obviously "Don't turn your back on me." Now obviously being deaf and being in that situation makes it even 10 times more terrifying, and you finally see someone and you just have some sort of communication, and
all communication goes, the minute somebody turns their back, you can no longer see the face to know, one, that they're actually speaking if you can't hear them, or two, to actually use it as a tool on top of what you can hear to actually pick up the conversation, because not everybody, depending on how you were brought up and what community you fell into, knows sign language, because I don't. I know.
Yeah, she doesn't.
I know very little. I know bits, and that's why it's so important that people learn it, and it should be taught from pretty much primary one for our Brits.
It should.
The same way we learn were numbers and letters in English. Yeah. It should be exactly the same. It should be taught alongside.
Yes, and it's not, and it's really annoying, because thankfully before this episode came out, I already knew who Rose Alien Ellis was. Now I remember hearing about the Strictly thing back when she won it very briefly. It was like the first deaf person to win this. I remember that coming up as an article, and obviously it was amazing to see that. But a good month ago, me and Lynn watched the documentaries on BBC iPlayer that she's been in, which was the one talking about her experience of being deaf and growing up.
Yeah, and Hearing for Change.
Hearing for Change, that's it. And then there was a 2-episode series where she went to an old folks home and basically got them to learn British Sign Language. and got them to communicate and go out to see others who were part of that community.
That was a really interesting one, because on the fact that people always associate it for deaf people and deaf people only, but so many people end up in accidents or illnesses that they do lose the sense of well-being to communicate. They might be able to communicate to some degree, but just having those extra signs might be all they need to advance those communications a bit better. Because if you are so ill in hospital, you can't speak, just a few simple signs might be enough to just tell them exactly what you're feeling, because they can help you in that moment a bit easier. Or as you get older, your body deteriorates, so you do lose that percentage of your hearing. Not everybody, but most people tend to do. So just having those skills there as well kind of help, because it is 1 in 5 people have hearing problems. But I don't know off the top of my head how much of that is just being due to age and body deteriorating as it actually does.
Yeah. It's a big cliche thing in the community that you're born deaf from the off and you need to learn that at some point in your life. That's not quite the case. There was a beautiful moment, we're really going off topic, but there was a beautiful moment at the end of that documentary where Rose was really proud that she got them to learn that, because someone passed away not too long after filming that documentary series, and because of what she was suffering from, it became really hard for her to speak pretty much in her last week of life. So the sign language she learned from Rose, she used to communicate to the hospital members, and they had someone on standby to know what they were saying and communicating with. And the fact that it even happened at all, Rose felt like she'd done that at the right time for that person, because if that hadn't happened, that person would have had no way of communicating at all. Maybe writing stuff down, who knows, but it would not have happened. So it's a big thing with this, that it's just for, deaf people only. No, it can be used for many things. And again, in that documentary, we had pretty much the first deaf and blind person, ever, I think, on
TV,
on British television, at least anyway, showing how they communicate. And because this person was already deaf and had learnt all that, but then they went blind, they'll like holding someone's hand, they know those signals, they know what this person's talking to with, and that's absolutely,
without having to learn both at the same time.
Having to learn both at the same time, like, that's absolutely incredible. And the fact, watching Unleashed for this, they had like all these people on standby, and there was someone who was completely deaf on that, and showing that, how they communicate back and forth, but also like to be that precise, like Ncuti was going on about how absolutely like upstaged he felt by Rosalie Ellis, because she had a lot of pressure on, the fact she's had to sit there, right? She's obviously read her lines, but she needs them communicated to her to know what she's going to say next from the other side of the set. And obviously she's, she does sign language just naturally, which they were doing in that. And then Ncuti's doing it back, and they have to make sure that Ncuti's, communicating the thing correctly. Like, to have that much pressure on, and, to put all that effort in is absolutely amazing to me. And that was a standout for me.
Unfortunately, no disrespect to any of the other cast members, because obviously there's a lot of work they get into making a show like that.
Yeah.
But he's probably the one that had to put the most work in, because if you remember from Time for Change, he would have had to have taken that script, read it through, and rewrote it.
Yeah.
Because being the fact that how hearing English is structured is completely different to how BSL English is spoken, because a lot of words that we would use is cut out. We would be more BSL, more direct in how it speaks. So rather than saying something like I went to the shops, today and bought milk,
yeah,
you would probably sort of do something along the lines of bought milk at the top today.
yeah.
Just kept it very, very simple and just picked out the keywords of the start the sentence. And don't get me wrong, we do use things like what and stuff, but it's very rare.
No, I know. But like, it's she obviously had the hardest, job out of any of the members in doing that, and like, I was just really mesmerized by it, to be completely honest. It's because we've never had it in the show, and it is so important to let me finish. It's because we had the first blind person in Doctor Who, obviously in the Jodie Whittaker era, and It Takes You Away.
Oh yeah, I forgot
did you forget about that? Yeah. At that point, she had a little bit of sight, not much, but a little bit. Is gone now. She's completely lost her sight as times went on. But obviously, that was a big deal, of course, to have that. So obviously, the next thing to do, in terms of more well-known disabilities, is obviously deafness, and I'm just glad they tackled that. And her, like, it's amazing how much she's took off, because she won that Strictly. She was known more of a soap actress. She's done theatre, but for her to really step into this realm, it was her first sci-fi and really big television as well. But to step into that, and just the way her performance was so like natural. It didn't feel like I was watching Rose Alien Ellis. I felt like I was watching this real character, and for her to only do that in the span of like 3 years, that's really incredible. And she's clearly like a big representative, and clearly it was on RTD's mind to get her in the show and do it, because it would have meant a lot to people. And again, like the way they incorporated the sign language actually into the episode, with like the communication out of the chest, like that's amazing. That is so amazing, because they're considering someone being deaf. So if they don't all know sign language, they're gonna talk, and it's gonna project at a screen in their chest, and the text is gonna come up for them. That's amazing. I love that. That was like the key point and my highlight of the episode for me. And I'm very proud of her. To step into something like that.
Not only the fact that she had to really align in her own way.
Yeah.
It was more. I think it's a lot easier for her because she's done it for so long, speaking and signing at the same time.
Yeah.
But by and large, for a lot of people, even I can find it a little difficult myself when I'm trying to learn bits here and there. Signing and speaking at the same time can be very, very, very off-putting.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to add what we call it, voice off, and not speak, because the minute you try to speak, you've got and you know how to speak.
Yeah.
Because you've learned how to speak through school and through family and life. You know how to structure sentences in that way.
Yeah.
So you're automatically going to try to speak that way, but the signs aren't going to match up.
No.
Whereas once you've learned both and you get used to both, it's very difficult to do, but then you can speak for somebody to understand but sign in the other structure.
Yeah.
It's two things trying to balance off each other and bounce off each other. They don't want to fit and shouldn't fit.
No, it is. Well, obviously that's
but you still do need to make the movement when signing though. You're not completely not communicating. You're still speaking, but you're speaking the signs that you're doing, not the words that you would have spoken.
Yeah, no. Obviously that's her way of communicating. But again, for example, in that documentary we watched, remember when again we're talking a lot about that, but I'm gonna wrap this section of the review up. But remember we were watching it, and they got the old folks to obviously do their speech or whatever, and then there was her who tried to speak whilst doing the signing, and she just could not do it.
Yeah.
And she got overwhelmed, and then she just had to take a breather, and then she just done it all through sign language, and it was showing that kind of like, if you just switch that off, it can be a lot easier.
Oh yeah, know? Definitely.
But obviously for Rose, that is what she speaks and does that. That's just her way of communicating. That's her her go-to.
I think it's more because he has a proper speaking voice.
Well, yeah,
because the sad factor is, if I'm a bit different for different reasons, which I'll come on to, but if you're born with hearing parents, the biggest advice you're normally given is go for speech therapy and learn how to speak. It'll do them wonders.
Yeah.
And yes, don't get me wrong, it will, because not everybody's going to be able to communicate with you. But it doesn't mean you couldn't go and learn be yourself, because be yourself as a deaf person should be their first language over and over every time.
Yeah.
Should be. And it's sad that that's what they tell them to do, go and learn how to speak.
Yeah.
But ideally, because the world doesn't fit around us, we've got to fit around the world. You've got to sort of have a balance somewhere. Yeah. So learning to speak to some degree will help, and it'll never be perfect. That's why when you hear a deaf person speak, it does sound high-pitched, weird, and distorted. But if you listen carefully enough and put that aside, you can make out what they're saying. Yeah. It's just not what you're used to seeing. Whereas myself, I went through a different route. Yes, I did have speech therapy, but mine wasn't because of my hearing. That's also because I've got what they call a cleft palate.
Oh, yeah.
I'm very lucky I don't have the lip to match it. Like, it's more common when people recognise it more commonly because of the lip dysfunction.
Yeah.
But I only have the palate, so I went for speech therapy for that. So that way I'm not talking through my nose. Which I still do it anyway to some degree. But I didn't do it.
I didn't notice that until she pointed it out.
But I didn't get it for my hearing. But at the same time, I had done the wonders.
No.
Because it means that I've just picked things up through everyday life. I've not really learned anything. So, as much as I would love to learn BSL, I'm finding it so difficult. I just want to learn it much earlier in life.
Yeah, well, and depending on how her hearing goes for the rest of her life, I might have to learn it eventually. There's a book down there.
Might have to. You can be learning it regardless. Everybody can be learning it regardless.
Okay. And what was the point you just made there? Saying it's very hard to do.
It is. But everybody can still at least try and learn the basics.
Yes, and you tried that with me last year. Anyway, obviously, I've said that I'm gonna learn it if I have to, which you've still got well, you do have a voice. Stop looking off to the side. Right. Anyway, let's hope she doesn't completely lose her hearing.
Oh, I hope not. I don't know how I can survive.
So coming on, that was actually what you just said is a good segue into this. So I will give them this. This is now a crossover between the Hearing Fine and the Midnight Entity. Someone not being able to hear it is a really good way of bringing that back.
Yeah.
Because obviously, in the original episode, it was all reliant on them all being able to hear each other and repeating and stuff and being in sync, which I'm really glad they didn't do any of that this time. It's just because rewatching the original episode yesterday, I was blown away by how well that was done again. Like Tennant and her are so in sync, and saying stuff just before Tennant or after Tennant. It's like, oh, this is like, they're in one set, but doing that kind of script is really hard to learn. Doing perfect synchronization is really tricky, and I was just blown away by watching it again. I really wanted some of that in the well, but the fact that she, again, is deaf and this Fine is whispering, she's not going to hear it. And that's a really genius way, I think, to bring it in. Now, my biggest problem with this episode is, again, I don't know how to feel about it. Because, again, from the trailer, it looked very dark and mysterious to me. But I don't think it was dark enough for me, which might be the problem. I don't know. I mean, for fucking hell, the Fine was flinging people up in the fucking air. And, you had, bones, crunching, and that is right, that it is brutal. It's very brutal, but obviously RTD has said, there are 6-year-olds watching this, you do need to be careful. I get that. Doctor Who's television medium is not a place for that. Big Finish is for that. There's a difference. I get it, it's fine. it's just, I think I would have preferred if it wasn't the Midnight Entity, because RTD said this in Unleashed and it really annoyed me. He said, right, this is the episode we should never do a sequel to, and then because he's co-wrote this by with the woman that I can't remember the name of, but him and a woman have co-wrote it together, right? And you can clearly tell the parts the episode that the woman had wrote, I need to stop saying that, but I can't remember her name, but you can tell what she wrote was all the mining planet and, you know, the corporation, and like you can tell she wrote that, and you can tell that RTD has shoehorned in the Midnight Entity. Like, that's why I feel like it feels a bit disjointed. It's two different people's types of writing that they're trying to fit together. Yes, it's co-writing, you make it fit, you make it work, but like, I'm gonna go back and watch that episode, and I think next time we'll be like, oh, that's her writing those parts, that's RTD writing those parts. You know, it's not a good thing when you can tell. And he even said in Unleashed that the more the script went on, he felt like it was the natural course for it to do so, which I completely disagree with. To me, you should have done completely new from the off and not bring this thing back. It's like, oh, because it makes sense. It's like, yeah, okay, the planet's been mined, sure, yeah, smashing all the mirrors, which, you know, pretty much as soon as I saw that in the episode, I was like, yeah, it's going to be the Midnight Entity, because obviously we never see this thing in reflection anyway, so I could tell from the off, like, it was pretty obvious even early on, and obviously, yeah, her being on her own, you know, like, she's obviously, like, I could tell immediately, oh, she's the host for this thing, isn't she, then, but to me, it's a good episode of Doctor Who. It's a shit Midnight sequel, and that's what I'm seeing it as. Now, again, I loved what it done, you know, throwing people in there, and that, like, it got really dark and tense, like, oh fuck, this is really, like, you know, hard hitting, but because I think of how I feel about the writing being a bit disjointed, it's annoying me, and it does just, both things just don't quite match up. And I didn't want this thing to come back. Like, to me, there's just certain things the Doctor Who should never bring back, like the Vashta Nerada, the Flood, the Midnight Entity. To be honest, I think Davros should have never came back after Genesis, because that wasn't the intention anyway. He was never meant to come back. Sutekh, you know, you don't bring back fucking Sutekh. You just don't. It's just one of those things that you just don't do it. And, you know, I didn't want this creature to come back, and like, I like what they've done with it and expanding upon it, but, you know, and I'll give him this though. I mean, that whole fucking because it's behind her and facing, you strike 12 at midnight, it kills you. That's fucking genius. Like, I love that. I was watching that. I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's really clever. Yeah, because we're expanding upon this. You know, I feel like a Moffat thing to do, to be honest, that kind of thing. But it was very clever and genius, and it worked. But and people are absolutely loving this episode, and I don't get why people are saying that. Oh, this is one of the best in absolute years. I'm like, we were saying that a week ago about Lux, and it's one of the things that's annoying. It's like, we've got two things back to back. Don't put the fans in the show. To me, you shouldn't do that. And again, it's a good episode of Doctor Who. It's just a shit Midnight sequel to me. You know, of course the original was going to be better. It's always going to be better. You know, it's just that your one-time thing. You know, your original source is always going to be the best. Yeah, don't get me wrong, there are certain sequels that are better than others, of course. You know, it can happen. But for this, it's just... See, and I'm really annoyed that I don't like it.
Don't be.
Because I feel like I should be like everyone else. You'll be... I love how you tap my shoulder, like, oh, you'll be fine. People love this, and I don't get why. I'm just like, it's disjointed.
But what it did do, though, is give you more Mickey Flint's clues.
Oh, that stuff at the end, yeah.
Yeah, because...
Bring that up now, yeah.
Because at the end of the day, this is the first time I've actually seen her not playing the neighbourly character. Because in Lux, he was part of the community, so still a neighbour of some sort.
I think, as I said...
And so it means that, one, because now we know that he can be something other than just the neighbour. We know that the reality...
War.
What? The Linda Chandler reality thing.
Oh, sorry, the Vindicator.
Vindicator, that's the one.
Uh-huh.
And now must be somewhat important to her plan.
Which, yes.
Somewhat important to her plan.
I think it's going to be an arc.
And then the fact that, one we already know the Earth is gone to some degree, but we don't know how, and we know we can't get back to the 24th.
Yeah.
But now we know that nobody knows of the Earth, so has reality been broken further back than that date because of what's going on to the fact that the Earth doesn't exist at all?
Yeah. No, yeah, people have been saying they're not giving away anything, or what is this? It's like, that's the whole point. Ever since you first seen that in Church of Ruby Road during that fucking weird scene halfway through the credits playing, just a random scene that comes up halfway through the credits, never seen a TARDIS before. Obviously in that moment you're like, oh, who is she? She was just this random old woman throughout the episode. No, there's more to this character. And then she's popped up a few times throughout season 1. And then in like Empire of Death, or sorry, Legend, she said, the one who waits no more. She also looked out the window, was like, oh, this is very ominous. But you don't see her again for the entirety of the rest of the episode, I think, from memory. And then, you know...
No, I hadn't you here at the very end.
Okay.
Which is in the white suit.
That's it, yeah. And then, obviously, there's been a lot of fourth wall breaking with this character. And, you know, she's like, oh, you ain't seen me, and like... limited run only, I'm afraid. Show ends May the 24th. It's like, haha, you know what you're doing? And I've clocked this today and I'm really annoyed. The fucking last episode is called The Reality War. What do we have? Reality, fiction. What did we do last week in Lux? We're the fiction, the Doctor's of reality, or whatever way you want to look at that. And I'm very fucking scared, right?
Yeah, I know where you're headed with this, because a lot of other people have also said, are we going to like the fiction again?
No, not that. No,
but a lot of people have went down that route.
I hope not.
Are we going to like the fiction?
Right, I hope not, because I'm very fucking worried that little silly scene in Lux was actual setup for this finale. Because if you look, Mrs. Flood has kept breaking the fourth wall pretty much every fucking time she's been on screen. Even that line, show ends May the 24th. You know, she didn't look at the camera and go, you know, like, you know what that line is doing, you know, and pretty much she's been doing it a lot, and it's like, the reality war, Mrs. Flood. Who is Mrs. Flood? Is she from, you know, the non-fiction world of us? I don't get what's going on, but because it's called the reality war, I am fucking thinking that we are somehow going to be in it. I think we're going to be in it now. The more I'm thinking about it, the more RTD writes his finales and racking my brains, like, I want to put it past him to do it. That random throwaway scene in Lux that you're supposed to think is just a random scene doesn't mean anything. Nah, I think it means more than what they're letting on. I'm not putting it past them to do it.
Time will tell.
It's called the reality war. Think about it. He's going to put us in it. We're canon.
Time will tell. Calm down.
Anyway, I don't want this because to me, I'm just one of those fans. You shouldn't put the fans in the show. You know, that's just a big no-no to me. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, she's obviously very mysterious and yada yada yada, but yeah, it's weird seeing her obviously not play herself for the first time. But is this just RTD's thing where he casts like an old woman and just puts them in every episode throughout the season? He's done that twice in a row now. And we know Susan Twist is going to be back in this season at one point. We know that.
Yeah.
She might be next week, probably no, because it's Unit.
I think he's going to be sort of minor.
Oh no, she will be.
Because I think she's going to be there as the. I don't think they're going to be able to take back for the Guardian. I think it might just be Bloody Susan back as the key for the Pantheon. So, I don't think it'll be any more than that.
Do you think Kate Stewart hired her? Again.
Unlikely.
Kate fucking hires everyone now and it's kind of annoying me.
Well, I really love Kate, come on.
It's not that.
Kate.
No, it's not that. It's the fact every fucking person she meets is like, you can have a job, like, stop.
Well, at the end of the day, if you've experienced what they've experienced, do you think you can really go back to normal life and not want to fight the world and fix all the problems?
No, I know that. I just wish Kate, every time Kate's on screen with a fucking old companion, she's like, yeah, you're gonna have a job. It's like, okay, we get it, you're desperate, please. It's really annoying me because it happens every time now. But, yeah, we know Susan Twist she might pop up next week for all we know. Obviously, we know Ruby's back. I don't think for the rest of the season, I think it's going to be a random pop-up every so often. But we know Ruby's back next week, obviously.
No, we didn't really get much from one week other than you don't talk
podcast. We know Unit's going to be in next week's episode, so I don't doubt Susan Twist will probably be randomly there. But yeah, it's just a thing I've noticed.
Either that or she might pop up in episode 6.
Yeah, one of the Star song. Yeah,
one of the acts maybe.
She might. Who knows? But because that's not to say she isn't playing the same character. She might be playing someone completely different for all we know this time.
I presume it'll be along the line of similar character.
Yeah. But I've just noticed RTD seems to cast an older woman to have as an arc every season, so I wonder how we get for season 3. Anyway, that pretty much wraps it up for this review. I don't know how to feel about this. People love it. I don't get why. It's like Lux. I think Lux, I finally clocked it after watching it 3 times. It's like, yeah, sorry, it's just the fan stuff that just brings it down for me. But love it up until the 28-minute mark for me. Robot Revolution, well, I don't really like that anyway. And as for this, it's like, I don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. I was feeling tension and I had shivers down my spine while I was watching the thing, but I just don't think it should have been a midnight sequel. That's my biggest problem with it. And people are loving it for being, and that's like, the more you think about it, it's like, you don't have to do this, you know, I just want something new. And RTD, stop saying there's no returning monsters every fucking time a new season comes out. Sutek, now the Midnight Entity, probably the Rani, it keeps happening, it's very annoying. Stop lying to us. But, yeah, it pretty much wraps us up. So, on the whole, for me, I'm gonna give it because I'm trying to think about it more. I need to rewatch it. I'm gonna rewatch it to see if I love it. But I'll give it a 6.3 out of 10. It's very specific.
I'd say that an 8 for me.
Above average, yeah. Lynn liked it a lot more than me. Anyway, your usual shout outs and things. I forgot to put the links, by the way, in the description and comments of last week's video. Apologies about that. Sorry, I forgot.
As usual, if you want to check out what I'm doing, just go to most social medias and look search the Week Off where you can find me on most of the major ones. In terms of what I've been up to lately, I have put up the first issue of the Dalek Build on my Ko-fi for Ko-fi members. So if you're an Attack member, you can go and view that. Or if you would like to subscribe to it, then you can do that as well and become a new member. I've also on the same tier put up the very brief of a new prop that I made for my Attack Ko-fi that I was using at KaijuCon in the weekend. It's very brief because there's not really much to it, but I thought I would still share it anyway. But for terms of tiers and stuff for Ko-fi, it's where I'll post a majority of stuff first that I need to go out to everybody.
Yeah.
So if you want to see what costumes I'm making, what costumes I'm going to be using for certain cons, they'll be all revealed there, whereas everybody else will have all the clues and everything else to work out before I actually reveal them. So you can look at all that stuff on there. But as I said, at the end of the day, if you can't subscribe and support me through Ko-fi, just share, like, comment would be the biggest help, and it costs you absolutely nothing to do. It just helps get the content out there so other people may see it that may be able to contribute down the line somewhere. It
helps the algorithm. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I will put the links in the description and comments this time. I forgot to do it last week. It's probably I'll go back and do it both. But yeah, sorry about that, everyone. Yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it for this review. We'll see you next week for Lucky Day. Yeah, these reviews are getting longer and longer. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all soon. Goodbye.